I discovered 3 disturbing true scary stories that will haunt your dreams forever. I never should have opened that door. It was just a simple, unassuming door at the end of the hallway, but something deep inside whispered for me to turn the knob. A chill danced down my spine as I hesitated, heart pounding. I glanced around, my usual safe haven suddenly feeling foreign. The familiar creaks of my home turned sinister, the shadows lengthening in the dim light. My morning had already started like any other. I made coffee, the rich aroma mingling with the cool, lazy morning air. The sun had barely risen, casting ghostly beams that flickered past the blinds. But then, I heard a soft thud of something unidentifiable against the wall. My chest tightened. I took a cautious step toward the sound, wondering if my imagination was playing tricks on me. The darkness around me thickened. It smelled damp, almost like old cardboard. Then came the whispers, just out of earshot. I stopped. My heart raced, my breath shallow. No one else was supposed to be here. The kitchen clock ticked louder, each tick a taunting reminder of my solitude. I focused on the door at the end of the hall. Something told me it wasn't just a door. Cautiously, I glanced down the hallway. My feet felt heavy as if they were bound in quicksand. Shadowy figures danced in the corners of my vision, disappearing whenever I turned to look. An old, dusty rug shifted slightly under the weight of something. I could almost hear it breathing. Then came the distinct clinking of glass against glass. I froze. The cabinet doors in the kitchen swung open, one after the other, with a slow, creaking sound that sent chills coursing through me. Panic rose in my throat. I stumbled backward, my instincts screaming for me to run. But I couldn't. My body wouldn't let me move. I glanced at the door again. It was cracked open now, just a sliver, and that sliver of darkness was growing. I could feel it pulling me in, as if it had a mind of its own. What lay beyond? My mind raced with dread. When I finally summoned the courage to take a step closer, a figure shifted inside the shadow, a mere wisp of movement that vanished as quickly as it came. Then, without warning, an ice-cold gust rushed through the hallway, slamming the door shut with a resounding bang. My scream caught in my throat. The walls seemed to shudder, vibrating with an energy I couldn't comprehend. I was left standing there, heart pounding, breath caught, when I felt a chill shadow dance across my back. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The air hung thick with the fetid taste of fear, my mind racing as I pressed my back against the wall, feeling the rough texture claw at my skin. Desperation twisted my thoughts. I had to get out of here. Breathless, I cautiously lowered my gaze towards the ominous door, half expecting it to slide open again and reveal whatever sinister entity beckoned from within its depths. But it remained ominously closed, a silent promise of horrors yet unshared. My gaze darted across the hallway, searching for a way, any way, to escape. Each heartbeat echoed like a drum in my ears, drowning out the oppressive silence that threatened to swallow me whole. The shadows seemed to shift and writhe, curling along the edges of the walls, alive and hungry. A sudden skittering noise interrupted my fearful reverie, a faint pattering, almost like tiny feet. It came from the living room. Against every warning instinct, I turned my head, each fiber of my being screaming to look away. A dark shape scuttled across the floor, then vanished under the couch. I squeezed my eyes shut, fighting against the urge to scream. Heavy footsteps thudded closer, but not from the living room. No, these were sharp and deliberate, resonating with an unnatural tempo that sent my heart racing anew. They were coming from behind me, from the direction of the door I had dared not open. I whipped around, frozen in place. The door appeared unchanged, a solid barrier against whatever darkness lay within. Yet, I could feel it, an undeniable stirring, a sensation of 1,000 eyes boring into my back, urging me to turn around. I could sense the malevolent glee of a lurking presence, waiting to ensnare me in a world of nightmares. In that moment, I felt a cold hand grasping at my throat, tightening slowly. I gasped, flailing at the invisible force, desperate to free myself from its suffocating grip. Panic surged, and I knew I had to make a choice. I could either bolt down the hallway toward the front door, the fading echo of my safety net, or I could confront the darkness right behind me. In a sudden surge of will, I stumbled toward the living room, my heart thundering with each frantic step. The couch loomed like a tempestuous beast, and I half expected it to lunge at me as I drew closer. But as I bent low to peer underneath, my vision swirled in the dim light, revealing what appeared to be a collection of small, mangled toys, some half melted, others gutted, their eyes staring back at me with a hollow vacancy. Then, without warning, a cacophony erupted from the hallway, glass shattering followed by laughter loud, maniacal, and utterly inhuman. I screamed. I should have run, but I was entranced by the grotesque sight before me. They were my toys, me childhood companions, and they were twisted into grotesque parodies of their former selves, each carrying the silent promise of forgotten night terrors. Suddenly, the door creaked open slowly, darkness spilling like ink across the floor. I felt the icy grip on my throat clawing tighter, dragging me inexorably toward that yawning maw of shadows, whispering secrets that slithered into my mind. Then I saw the massive silhouette of a figure emerging, towering above me. Its eyes glowed with an eldritch light, piercing through the darkness, fixing on me with a predatory hunger, and in that final moment of clarity, I realized the terrible truth. It wasn't just my fears that had been awakened, it was something far older, something that had waited long for me to unlock the door. As it opened its mouth to laugh, the sound reverberating in a chilling symphony of darkness, I lost the will to fight back. Then everything went black. As I descended into the abyss of nothingness, time blurred, twisting around me like an intricate tapestry of dread. The stillness was heavy, a shroud that suffocated my thoughts, leaving behind only an echo of the figure's haunting laugh and the taunting crunch of broken toys underfoot. I leaped forward in desperation, but instead of landing on solid ground, I found myself plunging into a labyrinth of darkness, an infinite corridor with no beginning or end. Sound returned to me gradually, seeping into the void like fog. Whispers and cries from 1,000 lost souls rode the waves of the unseen. Out of the shifting shadows, snatches of conversation floated into my ears, words twisting and turning into one another until they formed a chorus of madness. Join us, they cooed, become one with the despair. Each pulse of sound drew me deeper, not toward escape but into an abyss of unfathomable emotion. It was a kaleidoscope of terror echoed in the laughter of those once familiar and now grotesque. I strained to listen, hoping to glean the truth behind their torment, but each voice melted into the next, drowning me in sorrowful tales of longing and regret. Suddenly, a feeble light flickered into existence, threading through the darkness. It pinned the shadows to the walls, revealing macabre outlines whispered about by the unseen inhabitants. I stumbled forward as the light grew brighter, feeling its warmth against my icy skin. A false beacon in an unrelenting nightmare. The living room emerged before me, but it was distorted, a funhouse mirror of its former self. Paint peeled from the walls like dead skin, and the air was thick with the cloying odor of decay. The once vibrant couch slumped heavily, devoured by the void, its upholstery frayed and stained. They were there, my toys, morphed into grotesque versions of their playful selves, their hollow eyes glistening with malevolence. I reached for a teddy bear, its soft fur now matted and lifeless, as a memory drifted back. A child's laughter, light and carefree. Then, like a thunderclap, I remembered the laughter that had echoed after me, the disembodied laughter of my own joy twisted into something unrecognizable. I recoiled as the bear's stitched mouth creaked open, revealing rows of jagged teeth where once there had been a warm smile. A chill crept up my spine as the bear spoke, its voice a haunting rasp. Time to play again. It lunged at me, sharp claws slicing through the air, but as I stumbled back, the darkness clawed at me from behind, urging me forward into a room I had never entered. Frantically, I found myself cornered against the window, staring into the absolute blackness outside. I could feel the eyes crawling all over me, prying into my very soul, searching for the fear they craved. I wanted to scream, to shatter the silence with the truth that pulsed in my chest, that I had awoken something more than childhood fears, that I was at the precipice of a reality that twisted the knife further with each breath I took. The walls around me began to breathe, in and out, in time with a low, guttural sound emanating from the phantom edges of the room. And there, just beyond the threshold of sight, limbs wreathed a tide of shadow weaving and binding together to form a mass that beckoned with serpentine grace. The shape began to rise, morphing into something more defined, more terrible. With one last flicker of light, I caught a glimpse of its face, an overlapped mosaic of every nightmare I had ever encountered, a grotesque, contorted visage reflecting my own terror back at me. Eyes like black holes, a mouth stretched impossibly wide, teeth splintering like shards of glass, every feature melding into a facade of my own fractured psyche. "Stay with us," it whispered, and as it reached for me, the darkness buckled, and the world around me erupted with panic. I felt the floor breathe beneath me, the very foundation shifting as a terrible scream clawed its way up from my throat, desperate to break free. But before I could utter a sound, I was falling again into that swirling honeycomb of mania, the whispers intensifying until they enveloped me, a deafening roar spiraling me down into their midst. Then, just as suddenly as the plunge began, I hit something firm, a cold, unyielding surface. I lifted my head to see what awaited me in this new nightmare, and before me lay an orchard of twisted trees, each marked with the faces of those I had lost. Their eyes watched, filled with an aching frustration, as my breath hitched. In the distance, I heard it again, the laughter it had whispered before, but this time, it wasn't alone. An entire chorus of maddened joy rose, cascading through the abyss. Each note carried with it the weight of a promise unfulfilled, an invitation to madness that painted the edges of my reality. And as the forest shimmered, I understood I had entered their realm, a reality intertwined with my own, where past and present collided in a beautiful disaster. There, among the twisted branches and haunting laughter, the darkness beckoned me closer, simply asking, "Will you finally join us?" With their ghastly grins filling my mind, the ground beneath me quaked, and the realization hit this time: there would be no escape. The scent of rot hung thick in the air, clinging to my senses like a desperate lover, reminding me of lost moments and haunting memories. Each breath felt heavier, laden with the weight of those faces etched into the bark of the twisted trees surrounding me. I turned, searching for an exit, but the orchard stretched endlessly, each branch adorned with the eyes of the departed, following my every move. Their expressions twisted into masks of woe, whispering secrets only the dead could know, taunting me as I staggered through their grief. "Help us," they urged in unison, their hollow voices blending into an unsettling harmony that reverberated through the thicket like a death knell. My heart pounded with their pleas, urging me deeper into the darkness. I refused to acknowledge the weight of their insistent calls. I could almost feel their fingers grazing my arms, cold and insistent, drawing me toward the heart of their despair. Yet, in the cacophony of sorrow, a solitary laugh rang clear. It startled me, slicing through the melancholy and wrapping around my psyche like barbed wire. I froze, the sound familiar yet twisted, and dread surged through me as I recognized its laughter of innocence, a sound that once pierced through my heart like sunlight. It was unmistakably tied to my childhood, a time long lost in the shadow of memories. "Come find me," the voice sang sweetly, mingling with the tormented sounds of the orchard, luring me further into the entangled branches. I stumbled forward, the gnarly roots grasping at my ankles like skeletal hands, desperate to hold me still. A semblance of hope hung in the air, promising such warmth amidst the ever-present chill that encircled me. Ignoring the growing pit of dread in my stomach, I pressed on, drawn toward the sound of that familiar laughter. It drew me with urgency, that ghostly echo wrapping around my heart, mingling joy and melancholy in a cruel embrace. But as I forged ahead, the orchard transformed. The trees twisted grotesquely, their bark shifting into skin, warping into recognizable features that flickered like candle flames. There stood the figures from my past, warped reflections of my loved ones, and at their center the visage of my younger self, clutching a worn-out doll, its eye missing, the stitched mouth curling into a macabre smile. My heart lurched as realization crashed down upon me. Their laughter harbored no joy but rather a mocking melody steeped in despair. "Play with us," they chorused, the warmth turning icy. Fear spilled through me like venom, and I stumbled backward, eyes wide, feeling the weight of each intent gaze boring into my soul. "We've been waiting," branches jerked toward me, whipping against my skin like furious lashes. I tried to shout, pleading for release, yearning to tear myself away from the suffocating cocoon of despair, but words evaporated into the air, choked by the laughter that enveloped me. Suddenly, the laughter morphed into a horrifying cacophony, a twisted symphony of cries that reverberated inside my head, each note needle-sharp. Join us. Join us. The trees pulsed around me, their branches reaching hungrily, entwining like serpents, pulling me toward the epicenter of that haunting laughter that I broke free from the grasping roots, running blindly through the labyrinth of darkness. My heart raced, adrenaline coursing through my veins as I fled, the faces reaching out for me, the cacophony echoing ever louder. But as I ran, the ground beneath shifted. The path twisted, contorting like my very consciousness, and I felt the sense of direction slip through my fingers like sand. Just when I thought I had lost them, the laughter grew closer, more sinister, crawling under my skin like a disease. I could feel their presence behind me, monstrous shadows stretching further with each step. And that childlike laughter twisted, warping into something horrifying, drenched in malice. It was both me and not meth specter of joy turned into a harbinger of pending doom. In an instant, the forest erupted into chaos. The trees vibrated, their trunks shuddering violently, shedding their bark to reveal flayed skin underneath, bright with the sheen of fresh blood. A gruesome mosaic, each slice inviting, beckoning me to lose myself among the chaos, as the laughter urged me on. Embrace your fate, the air murmured, thick with longing and despair. Don't you remember? You belong here. Before I could respond, a darkness surged from the depths of the orchard's shadows, climbing higher, a towering figure that eclipsed the moon above, casting everything into a realm devoid of light. My heart stilled in terror as tendrils snapped out, claiming glimpses of my own past, the playground swings creaking in the breeze, a sunlit backyard, and the fading scent of freshly baked cookies. Then, from within the darkness, a face emerged, familiar and grotesque, twisted in anguish, lips pulled back in a mockery of a smile. It was the last person I had expected to see. Welcome back, it whispered, and time shattered as I stood frozen in horror, the reality of my own reflection twisting further into the void. Screams erupted, an ocean of despair crashing against the confines of my sanity. The shadows rushed forward, enveloping me as the ground opened up beneath my feet, revealing an endless pit of darkness that promised to consume everything: fear, hope, and the very essence of my soul. I fell, the abyss swallowing me whole, and for a fleeting moment, I thought I had escaped the torment of the orchard's grasp. But just as suddenly, I landed, hard and unyielding against the cold, damp ground, as the whispers of that grotesque laughter pulsed around me, vibrating through the very marrow of my bones, that I gasped for breath, choking on the thick air that clung to my lungs like a miasma. The ground was soft beneath me, a sickly combination of mud and something warm and sticky. I forced my eyes open, heart thundering as I tried to comprehend my surroundings. Around me sprawled a dimly lit expanse filled with more twisted trees, their trunks morphed into grotesque, lifelike forms. They loomed over me like judges of an unholy court, peering down with their ghastly bark faces, eyes wide and hollow, filled with unending grief. Gradually, I realized the pit was not merely a void but a small clearing surrounded by the very orchard I had fled. It was a nightmarish reflection of the world above, a macabre stage where the agony of the trees pulsed and breathed, each twisted figure calling out in derision. "What took you so long?" they hissed, their voices blending into an infernal symphony of mockery. That I scrambled to my feet, desperate to escape, but the roots underfoot were alive, slithering like serpents, wrapping around my ankles and pulling me down. Panic coursed through me as I tore at them, my nails breaking against the coarse texture of bark and flesh. Chaos reigned, a miasma of shadows swirling like a storm, obscuring any means of clarity or hope. "Remember the games we used to play?" The voice echoed, suddenly nearer, resonating in the darkness. It was impossibly sweet, tinged with nostalgia. I looked up, heart racing as I caught sight of a child's silhouette amid the perverse figures. It wasn't the child I had hoped to find. Instead, it was a crude imitation, its body swaying and twitching in a rhythm only it understood. "It's your turn now," the wretched figure crooned, its voice dripping with sugary malice. "Join us and we'll let you play forever." I recoiled as the child's laughter sliced through the air, the same innocent sound that had beckoned me earlier now distorted into a horrific taunt. The echoing of their mirth wrapped around me, dampening the last remnants of hope within my heart, and I felt the inevitable weight of fate pressing down. Each step back was consumed by a gnashing tide of despair. I had nowhere to run. Behind me, a rustling stirred, as limbs began to twist and morph right before my eyes. The trees pulsed, the shadows thickening, warping into forms that seemed to know the very fabric of my fears. They grimly reminded me of the faces I had tried to forget, every moment of loss pulling taut like coil springs, ready to unravel. Do you see them? The child's voice turned sharp and probing, demandingly inquisitive. They want you back. We haven't been whole without you. The laughter surrendered to echoing sobs, each note reverberating through me, holding me hostage in a web of my own making. It was unbearably intimate, each cry reawakening memories I had buried deep. Tears pooled in my eyes, a futile attempt to dampen the shrieking laughter that clawed at my sanity. I tightened my fists, intending to fight, but with each passing moment, I felt myself unwinding, drawn inexorably closer to joining their eternal plight. Then the shadows behind me thickened once more, tangling inextricably, pulling taut the veil of reality. Figures writhed, amalgamations of terror and familiarity, limbs reaching uninvited for my soul. I felt a tugging at my core, the orchard demanding my essence, pulling my very being to merge with its endless wail of loss. Join us, they chanted, their voices crescendoing in a monstrous harmony, circling me, surrounding me, until the night seemed to close in, pressing against my skin. Not again. I screamed, a final act of defiance echoing into the chaos. In that moment of desperation, I closed my eyes tight and braced for the inevitable assault, grappling with shadows and memories that twined around my spirit like chains. A soft breath of wind swept through the clearing, carrying whispers and laughter into the void. The trees began to sway, the ground trembling, as if anticipating a release. I dared to open my eyes, feeling unmoored, only to find the ghosts rushing toward me in a furious tidal wave of grief, sorrow coalescing in one singular entity, a tangible darkness pulling me closer, ready to unmake me entirely. But then, a face emerged from within that mass of anguish, a face I knew too well, one that nearly stopped my heart. Don't let them take you, it breathed, a final beacon of light amid the consuming darkness. Fight. Just as the shadow enveloped me, I felt a sudden chill as if the air itself had turned to ice. A blinding flicker of what felt like a glare pierced the seams of the dark, and with it came a resounding crack like thunder through the fog. I braced myself, limbs trembling. The chaotic grasp of the orchard stilled, and all at once, I witnessed amidst the horror, a shadow move against the light, and in that chilling moment, I realized the darkness was not just hungry for me. It hungered for something, someone far more powerful than even I could understand. My heart plummeted into the depths of despair as I heard the child's warning, echoing one final time before the world, once more, turned upside down, save yourself or lose everything. The ground began to split, my sanctuary collapsing into the infinite dark below. I clung to a vanishing hope, all while the laughter twisted into a final war cry of despair, hovering over the abyss as I felt myself being drawn down into the very heart of darkness. I fought against the insatiable pull of the ground as it crumbled beneath my feet, a grievous maw ready to swallow me whole. The shadowy waves of sorrow tightened around my ankles, the ghostly figures of the orchard reaching out with their skeletal, trembling hands, clawing at the edges of my sanity. Faces I couldn't quite place melded with anguish, their eyes wide in an unholy plea, their mouths moving soundlessly against the howling silence. They were a collage of my past, a haunting gallery of every fear and regret. Don't let them take you. Remember who you are, that familiar voice echoed again, distinct against the cacophony surrounding us. But even those revered words felt like a tether made of thin, fraying threads. I was losing myself, a specter trapped in a nightmare, spiraling deeper into the abyss where light began to dim, the ground cracked apart with each thundering heartbeat, as if the very fabric of reality could no longer sustain the orchard's appetite. And then, amidst the storm of memories and lamentations, I caught sight of something else, a displacement in the shadows coiling near the base of the nearest tree, something alive. It shifted, its form shifting almost like a ripple in the air, and a chill forked through the air like an electric current. Look closer, the child's voice urged, dripping with a chilling excitement. It's not just us who want you. With the last shards of defiance, I turned my gaze downward. Nestled between the roots, barely visible, was what appeared to be a splintered diarrhea journal battered by age and sorrow. The shadows recoiled ever so slightly as I reached for it, fingers trembling over its cracked leather cover. I felt a surge of purpose despite the dread clawing at my throat. Somehow, This journal held a key to the horror stretching all around me. The moment my fingers brushed its surface, the air crackled with anticipation. I opened it, the pages flicking like the panicked wings of trapped birds. Torn sketches decorated the margins, faces I recognized morphing into twisted caricatures, each one encapsulated in a moment of despair and desperation. With each illustration, fear became palpable whispers of tragedies unfolding, wrenched screams etched in graphite, emotions spilling from the pages as if they were alive, reaching for me. Stop. You don't want to know. The warning wailed, but curiosity, that insatiable beast, had already taken hold, urging me to immerse myself further. I traced my finger along the frayed edges, feeling the pulse of each sketch echo through my body. They were memories, lifetimes of loss unraveling before me, painting their terror against the darkness. Each page turned was a cry for help, but something grimmer lingered within those outlines, knowing that I was part of this suffering. Bind your fate, the child cooed. The words dripped sweetly with malice, each syllable curling around me like tar, pulling me deeper into this narrative web. Sometimes they need something more than you to set them free. With one last heave of strength, I tore my gaze from the grotesque journal and looked skyward as the ground buckled beneath me, my mind racing with the implications of those sketches. The trees wailed in anguish, their bark writhing as if in response to my thoughts. Filaments of shadow shot towards me like desperate fingers seeking to reclaim what they believed belonged to them. Bind yourself. Step into the tale. The whispers crescendoed into a nightmarish chant. You are the author and the victim. As if to answer their call, I felt a splintering pain shoot through my chest, digging deep into my flesh. I stumbled back as the shadows began to materialize. That wavering figure I'd glimpsed before now resonated with a hum of dark joy, its presence tightening around me. The landscape warped once more, flickering scenes of horror morphing into reality as I felt my breath hitched as I turned to face whatever had infiltrated my mind. What do you want from me? I gasped, heart racing, body trembling as the figures converged around me, a tempest of dread pushing against my skin. Everything. They murmured, their voices layered in harmony, now hauntingly melodic. Your story has just begun. Join with us, and we will bring you more. And suddenly, the ground beneath erupted. It shattered, flinging splinters of earth and despair into the abyss. Dark tendrils snaked forth in a spiraling storm, and there amidst the chaos, I saw it, the true form of darkness. It was a creature birthed of despair and agony, an embodiment of every lament united behind my heart, and nightmare made flesh and will. Your blood is the ink, your soul is the page, it roared, its voice reverberating through the churning air. Join us before the final chapter ends. I barely had time to register the enormity of what it proposed when the shadows lunged at me, a tidal wave of blackness that sucked me under. Breathless, grappling with the chaos, I felt my will wane. A gut-wrenching sensation took root as the voices around me harmonized into an inescapable symphony, and then I realized it was me who was transforming, the line between my essence and theirs blurring as I felt an irrevocable pull, a tether binding me to something far greater and darker than I could comprehend. Save yourself or lose everything, the child's voice echoed one last time just as the void swallowed me entirely, engulfing my vision in an endless darkness decorated with whispers of terror and blood. With my final moment of clarity, horror gripped my heart. I felt the void begin to take not just my spirit, but everything I was. And then it happened, the first fraying thread snapped. The darkness was overwhelming, a crushing weight that twisted around me, clawing at my consciousness. I gasped for air, only to realize there was none to inhale. The shadows no longer danced, they enveloped me, and within their depths, I could feel the echoes of those who had succumbed before, their fears and regrets mingling with mine, weaving a tapestry of pain that pulsed through me. Become one, the voices whispered, a continuous hum wrapping around my mind, growing louder, faster, melting into a sea of chaos. My thoughts splintered, scattering like autumn leaves caught in a tempest, drifting further from my grasp. I fought against their seduction, wrestling with the bond that sought to fortify itself deep within my essence. I want. I screamed, yet my voice was snatched away, drowned beneath the swell of anguished cries. Moments or perhaps lifetimes passed as I remained suspended in this eternal void, and then I felt it, a flicker of light far away, a glimmer of hope amidst the all-consuming dark. It flickered like a dying star, fragile and vulnerable, urging me to push through the endless night. I stretched toward it, the need for self-preservation igniting a fire within my chest. With every ounce of willpower, I tore myself from the suffocating whispers, clawing my way toward the flickering beacon. The weight of despair clawed at my heels, but with every inch, it felt as if I were dragging the tales of my past along with me. Regret, each moment of sorrow serving as a chain desperately trying to pull me back into oblivion. Finally, I burst through the darkness into frail light, landing hard on a surface that felt both foreign and familiar. I rolled, gasping, tasting the damp earth beneath me. My heart thundered against my ribcage, reverberating like an echo in the void. Around me, the landscape had shifted. The orchard was gone, replaced by an endless expanse of mist-cloaked hills, punctuated by twisted trees gnarled by time and memory. That I was alone, but the sensation of being watched crawled over my skin. The mist slithered around my ankles like a hushed whisper, and I struggled to catch my breath, desperately searching for an escape from the grasping shadows lurking at the periphery of my senses. Find the thread that binds, the child's voice called again, echoing like a haunting lullaby, mingling with the sighing wind. You are not free yet. Around me, the air thickened, laden with unspeakable dread. I staggered to my feet and pressed forward, sensing a movement behind me. Shadows flickered and coiled at the edge of my vision, remnants of what I had just escaped continuing to hunt. Where is it? I choked, desperation clawing at my throat. What do you want from me? Your truth. The voice seemed to ripple through the mist, taking on multiple layers, resonating with an ancient authority. You are the key to set us free, just as we are the keepers of your tale. The mist parted, drawing me deeper into that desolate landscape, and there, glinting in the pale light, I saw a thread shimmering against the gray. It twisted into the horizon, threading through the hills, a path that beckoned me closer. I reached for it, my fingers brushing against its ethereal surface. As I did, a horrific realization struck me. I could feel the essence of those entwined in the thread, their sorrows, their regrets, their lives seeping through like water from a fractured vessel. With each heartbeat, my resolve churned, an agonizing decision writhed inside me. I could still run or follow this thread to its end and with it, either reclaim my story or become another echo of the lost, but the shadows were closing in now, and the aura of dread intensified. Slender forms began to emerge from the veil, features twisting, altering like shifting smoke. This race held no resemblance to anyone I knew. Their eyes glinted with a predatory hunger, reflecting a depth of sorrow almost like my own. Your fate lies in the hands of the shadow. Embrace your truth, the voices chanted. Only then will the darkness feed. That I and the growing madness. I felt a tug within me, an impossible yearning. To understand, to remember, to connect with those who lingered here. The threads threatened to wrap around my heart, whispering forgotten memories, faces I had lost, choices I regretted. A vision of someone flashed before my eyes, and I stumbled back. Mom? I gasped, as the image of a solitary figure came into focus, a woman deep within the mist, her features etched with sorrow, her eyes mirroring a plea. But as I reached out for her, the mist churned violently, and the shadows coalesced into something monstrous, a mass of wrath and despair, with her face distorted and screaming. Don't let them take you. It echoed through the chilling air as the abyss opened again beneath me, yawning wide, hungry to engulf me. Embrace the truth or lose everything. The shadows roared, a cacophony of anguish entwined with my own. Just then, a sharp pain pierced through me, radiating from my heart a tangible reminder that I was not truly free. And I knew, right then, that I had to choose, for if I hesitated, the surge of darkness would drag me back again. I could either plunge into the thread of my deepest fears or face the void's insatiable grasp, but as I stood teetering on that precipice, the last strand snapped, sending a shudder through the landscape, shaking the very core of my being. The horrifying truth unfolded before me, and in that moment, a chilling laughter echoed through the darkness, splintering the air, and then I felt an icy grip on my shoulder, slowly turning me around to face my fate head-on. The grip tightened with a chilling intensity, and I braced myself to confront whatever nightmare awaited me. The shadows swirled around me, coiling into the familiar visage of my mother, her once kind features now contorted into a mask of terror. Why did you leave me? Her voice echoed like a haunting refrain, layered with the cries of the lost. With every syllable, I felt the air in my lungs grow thinner, as if her sorrow was siphoning what little life remained in me. I couldn't, my words tangled in my throat, the agony of remembrance overwhelming. I recalled the day, the accident. It felt like a piercing shard lodged deep within my soul. I tried to save you, the shadows writhed, hungry and relentless. Your fear is your anchor, they hissed in unison, and I was drawn toward the confusion concealed beneath the surface of her trauma. The mist roared to life, altering its form, revealing glimpses of past horrors, flickering moments of betrayal and despair that I had relegated to the dim corners of my mind. Look! Her voice urged me, trembling through the ether. Remember. Remember the threads of our lives. As if compelled by an unseen force, I was pulled back into the depths of my own memories. Scenes flooded me like an unstoppable tide, the smoldering remnants of our home after the fire, her frantic cries growing muffled beneath the flames, my small hands reaching helplessly for her silhouette through the thickening smoke. The taste of ash still lingered on my tongue, bitter and tainted with regret. Leave it. I begged the shadows, wishing to shield my mind from this torment. I can't face this, but they tightened their grip, whispering sweet promises of freedom if only I would surrender. You buried the truth, they taunted, forming into grotesque caricatures of my past, contorted faces pleading to be recognized. Join us in the honesty of despair. Suddenly, the mist stirred violently, revealing a warped version of my homey and idyllic scene steeped in ominous charm. The air turned cold, and I found myself drawn into a memory that should have remained dormant, a childhood game long forgotten. My friends, faces warped by an unseen dread, gathered around an old tree, its branches twisting skyward like skeletal fingers that we have to do it. One of them shouted, a voice edged with desperate delight. I remembered the thrill, the fear, the incantations whispered with a nervous giggle, and I could almost feel the weight of the cursed object in my palm, the old, rusted key. Let's open the door. Another voice chimed in, laughter mingling with shrieks of delight, until their mirth spiraled into agony as the air shifted. Something had awoken, something we couldn't control. Mom! Help us! I cried out, diving back into the memory, but her shadow danced just beyond reach, her form flickering like a dying ember. What did you do to them? I screamed, recognizing the figures now before me, flashes of terror that flickered through their eyes just as I had known them. They were forever trapped within that day, tethered to the darkness that bled from their laughter and echoed in my heart. The shadows erupted into a cacophony of voices, accusing and insistent. You led them here. You allowed it. Now we feast. My mother's visage twisted further into the void, every feature warped by grief and regret. You have to make a choice. She shouted, voice trembling. You have to face it, but the darkness around me pulsed with intoxicating allure, a perverse sense of belonging that sought to consume me whole. The walls of my mind strained under the weight of revelation, a truth I had tried to forget. Each memory exerted pressure until I thought I might split apart. That excruciating moment, the twisted forms of my lost friends surged forward, their skeletal fingers latching onto my arms, pulling me backward. The bite of their grip sent ice spiraling through my veins, and I felt the strain of their lost innocence as they cried, "Help us, Lisa! Help us, let them go!" I shrieked, flinging my body against the tide of shadows, desperately attempting to wrench myself free. Their pleas morphed into hollow echoes that reverberated against my skull, a chorus of unfulfilled dreams. Join us! They shrieked, faces blurring together into a grotesque amalgamation, their voices serrated and shrill, feeding off my anguish. No! I shouted back, desperate and rising. I won't be consumed by your darkness. The ragged breath of despair cracked the air between us, and suddenly, reality shifted. A blinding light exploded from my heart, erupting like a star collapsing into itself, momentarily pushing the shadows away and illuminating an impossible path within the fog. But the memory slammed against me, visceral and raw, a tidal wave pulling me under, an image of a door ajar, shadows slithering beneath, beckoning. From deep within, I felt the relentless pull of regret gnawing at my every resolve, yearning to slip back into ignorance, back to a time when the guilt did not wrap around my throat like a noose. And at that critical moment, the hollow laughter of the shadows surged anew, mocking my attempts at defiance. You cannot escape us, Lisa. The thread is sewn into your very being. As the light flickered, I sensed the door behind me closing, the final threads fraying between the known chaos and the obscured truth, leaving only a pulsing heartbeat resonating in the air. Which will it be? The shadows taunted, their whispers swelling to deafening clamor. That I knew I had to decide: Thento, face the fear that had haunted me, or succumb to the darkness that promised the release of ignorance. My pulse raced, and I could feel the fraying fabric of reality pulling apart beneath me. It was a moment of decision that I had never wanted to face, fraught with the weight of my past resonating through every echoing syllable. Just as I felt myself teeter on the edge of clarity, the ground beneath me shattered like glass, the fragmented pieces scattering into the boundless abyss below. My heart raced, breath caught, and before I could scream, I felt myself plunge into the dark below, a breathless fall into the unknown, where shadows awaited my arrival. The descent felt endless, a turbulent spiral into a realm where shadows ruled over every flickering heartbeat. I braced for impact against an unseen surface, only to land softly on a floor that pulsed beneath me like living flesh. The air was thick, heavy with the scent of decay and despair, suffocating my senses and weaving a desperate panic through my chest. I stumbled backward, trying to regain my footing, but the ground undulated with every tremor of my heart. "Lisa," a voice slithered out of the shadows, smooth yet laced with an inexplicable malice, drawing me further into the abyss. I turned, wide-eyed, scanning the void around me, searching for the source of that dreadful sound. Shadows coalesced into hideous forms, wretched and bent, crawling toward me like spiders with too many legs. Their eyes glinted, reflecting a malevolence that sent chills racing down my spine. Who are you?" I managed to whisper, backing away further, desperation clawing at the edges of my sanity. "Here, we thrive on remorse, child," they chanted, a chorus of hissing voices that reverberated through the expanse around me. "Your sorrow feeds us, and your fear strengthens our realm." The air thickened, wrapping around me like an inescapable shroud, suffocating the last shreds of courage within. "Stay back," I cried, but the shadows surged forward, fingers outstretched, weaving themselves through the air, yearning to caress my skin, to draw me into their twisted embrace. My pulse quickened as I recognized this sensation. The familiar suffocation of fear blossomed full in my chest, the pulse of all that I had tried to escape flooding back to me. Suddenly, I was pulled into a Visiona nightmare painting itself in grotesque chiaroscuro, forcing itself upon my mind. I saw my friends, the same warped faces as before, pleading and tormented, trapped in an endless loop of despair that echoed through time. They were intertwined with the shadows, their figures flickering like dying candles, each cry and note in a cacophony of wretched lamentation. "Help us, Lisa." Their voices rose in unison, knotted together in agony. The sound struck me like a physical blow, rippling through the dense air, a reminder of the pact forged in childhood that had sealed our fates. "Get away!" I screamed, hands raised in a feeble attempt to ward them off as memories flew toward me like arrows, sharp and relentless, each one a reminder of the darkness I had unleashed. "You shouldn't be here. I didn't mean to drag you into this," but the shadows laughed, their forms swirling into a grotesque dance, taunting me with the echoes of my own failures. "But you did. You summoned us, and now you are bound to us. Like your friends, you will remain here to suffer, to remember, forever. No. I responded, the air thickening with panic as I staggered backward. I had to escape this place, this haunting void I knew was a reflection of my guilt, yet every direction I turned dissolved into impenetrable darkness. The shadows followed me, feeding off my fear, as I stumbled helplessly deeper into the heart of the abyss. Suddenly, through the haze, I spotted a flicker of light in the distance that seemed to pulse with life against the endless desolation. Invigorated by a flicker of hope, I dashed toward it, my heart racing, propelled forward by an instinctual drive to find clarity amidst the nightmare closing in around me. With each step, the light grew brighter, illuminating what lay ahead, revealing a scene that turned my blood to ice. There, lying in a pool of shimmering light, were photographs each adorned with haunting images of my past, my friends' faces smiling back at me from a time when joy had still existed. But as I reached out to touch them, the smiles morphed into harrowing visages of pain. "This is your truth." The shadows shrieked, their voices jagged and scornful. "You can't escape it. You let them fall." I recoiled, the reality crashing down upon me like a violent wave, every picture infused with the essence of a life I had wished to leave behind. I had abandoned the friends, the pure thread of our bonds severed in a moment of terror and selfishness, leaving them to the wretched grasp of the darkness I had unleashed. Just as the realization began to sink in, the ground beneath the photographs trembled violently, fracturing into jagged cracks that spread like veins through the walls of the void. The light flickered, warping, casting shadows that danced menacingly around me. No. I shouted as the darkness surged, swallowing the light whole, the pictures crumbling to ash in midair. I stumbled back, panic rising within. No, not like this, but the shadows tightened their grip, reveling in my turmoil, their laughter echoing with malevolent glee. You've already lost, dear Lisa. Now you shall join them in despair. Just as I felt the familiar icy fingers closing around my throat, I glanced back toward the light, desperately seeking escape. And in that moment, I glimpsed something dark lurking in the shimmering glow, a figure, indistinct yet glaring with intent. Lisa. It called, a voice sweet like honey yet imbued with a chilling edge that made my heart stutter. Just as the shadows began to envelop me completely, that figure lunged forward, reaching out toward me with a desperate urgency, a stark contrast to the malevolence around. I felt the air shift with tension, and then chaos erupted. The ground heaved upwards, crashing back down, and the last thing I heard before being swallowed into the abyss was the figure's anguished scream, "Don't let it take you." And then darkness fell. I awoke in a cold sweat, heart racing, the pulse of panic still echoing in my ears as I grasped at fragments of that horrid dream. But as I lay there, my room around me bathed in the stillness of dawn, something felt different. Nausea twisted in my gut, me memories writhing with an unsettling clarity, as if I had truly stepped into that nightmarish realm and returned carried on the breath of shadows. That I sat up, the musty air suffocating me as I grasped at the edges of my memory. I could recall it all vividly, the friends I'd lost, the games we had played that sealed our fates in laughter and despair. I could almost see the faces, contorted with pleading, their ghostly whispers still painting the air with regret. But there was one face, one memory stronger than the rest. My resolve wavered, I felt a darkness swelling within me, threatening to drown me once more. That I stumbled toward the window, desperation clawing at my mind as I pulled the curtains apart. The world outside was untouched, bright in the morning sun, a blissful ignorance of the horrors I had just escaped. But another sound echoed through the silencia, low, sinister chuckle that wrapped around me like a vice. "Welcome back, Lisa," it purred from behind me. My heart skipped a beat as terror crashed through me like icy needles, pricking my skin. That I twisted around to face it. The shadows pulsed, gathering in the corner of the room, coalescing into a humanoid, twisted reflection of myself, a grotesque parody of all I had become, with eyes like smoldering coals staring back. "You thought you could run," it taunted, a throaty chuckle spilling from its lips. "But here you are, drawn back to the horror of your own making. And no, this isn't possible." I gasped, stepping back, but my feet were frozen to the ground as the reality of its words clawed at my heart. "I faced you. I thought I was free." A mirthless smile spread across the shadowy figure's face, making the air chill. "Free? Oh, you naive child. You are bound to us, your fears, your regrets, they are woven tightly into you, binding you to the abyss. You can never escape what you truly are." Memories surged forth, those of laughter turned to shrieks, childhood joy transformed into torment. I gasped as the inconsistencies of reality twisted in my mind, slashing through the tendrils of hope I had nurtured in the waking world. "I won't let you take me again. I can fight this." It laughed again, a chilling sound that echoed against the walls of my very mind. "It's too late, Lisa. Your friends are lost in the darkness, seething with despair, and now you belong to us as well. You thought you could live without facing the truth, but it has always been here, a part of your very essence." The room swirled, shadows lengthening and multiplying, wrapping around me until all I could see was the flickering figure before me. "But there is a way out if you are willing to accept your fate. Embrace the darkness, feed it with your grief, and you can free yourself from the chains of memory." Breath hitching in my throat, I felt it grasping for me, that ancient fear, the regret I thought I'd buried. The realization swept over me like a wave. This was not merely a figment of my imagination but something far more sinister that hungered for my soul. The familiar laughter of my childhood friends morphed into echoes of despair, pleas for freedom that crept from the depths of my being. No. I won't become one with that torment. I refuse. I screamed, the sound tearing from my throat as I grappled with the truth. I was as much a part of this horror as my laughter had once fed it. But the shadow laughed again, the sound wrapping around my heart like a vice. "Then your fate is sealed, for here we will feed on your fear until there is nothing left of you." Join us in lament, and we can share eternity together." All at once, the shadows surged forward, and I felt a rush of ancient power, bitter and intoxicating, threatening to engulf me. I wavered, teetering on the brink of acceptance, desperately trying to cling to the last flicker of light within memories of laughter, joy, and companionship that once shone brightly before me in a world untouched by despair. Yet, even as I fought, a realization dawned on me: will alone might not suffice. It must be anchored in the acceptance of my truth, my past choice to confront the shadows instead of allow them to consume me. With that clarity, I steadied myself. "You are right, I cannot escape the shadows you represent. But I will not let you define me," I shouted, my voice breaking through the clamor of fear. "I will embrace my sorrow, my memories, but I will also embrace the love we shared. You will not take me." A moment of silence fell before an ear-splitting crack erupted in the air, shattering the darkness around me. The specter reeled back, a howl of rage spilling forth, and as it did so, I thrust my hand into the shattered memoryscape, reclaiming every fragment of joy, every reflection of friendship, wrapping them tightly like a shield around my heart. "Not again!" I screamed, each word igniting a spark of incandescent hope against the unending night. With a final push, I wrenched open the door to the void I had fled. As light surged forth, enveloping the shadowy figure, I could hear its roar of anguish twisting into a spine-chilling finality. I stepped back, heart hammering in my chest, knowing that the grief would never fully dissipate, always a part of me, yet I was no longer shackled by despair. I felt alive in that moment, of being reborn from the ashes of pain, but, even as I triumphantly stepped beyond the threshold, one last laugh echoed in the silence, a haunting whisper that clung to my consciousness like black smoke crashing against my heart. "Remember, Lisa. You can never truly escape, for the darkness will always linger, waiting." And just before I could turn away from the door, I felt its icy fingers brush against me one last time, a reminder that though I had escaped the physical realm of that torment, its malevolence would always remain, edging just around the corners of my memories. For in the end, I understood, even as I made my way back into the sunlight, shadows were always lurking, eager to pull me close once more. As I stepped into the light, the chilling whisper followed me, a reminder of the darkness within myself. "You may have escaped, but I am always here, waiting to play."